Hey folks, welcome back to our Dice Tower preview. I'm Mark, and today we're taking a look at Whistle Mountain. Whistle Mountain is brought to you by Bezier Games. It's for 2 to 4 players, ages 14 and up, and games range anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes. So, Whistle Mountain gives a nod to Whistle Stop, but in this standalone game, you leave the train tracks behind and head to the sky with blimps, dreadnoughts, and hot air balloons. In Whistle Mountain, take your company's massive profits from all that railroading and invest them in new technologies deep in the Rocky Mountains where there is an abundance of resources. Your workers build crazy arrays of scaffolds and machines, upgrading your abilities and collecting those resources. As you build with the help of your airship fleet, the mountain's melting snow causes the water below to rise higher and higher, putting your workers in danger and increasing the tension on the dynamically changing board. So your goal here is to score the most victory points by building fantastic machines, improving your company, and training your workers to use the resources of Whistle Mountain. But again, you have to be very careful because as that snow melts, you will raise the water level higher and higher. So for setup, you're going to assemble this board, and you'll notice around the edges there are notches on the board, and this is where you're going to be placing your different airships, your workers, in order to do various things. Along this side of the board, the left side of the board, you have the different machines. You've got small machines, medium, and large machines. You'll place out those machines randomly, and then the rest of the stack face down. And along the bottom, you'll see that you have some meeples here. You have the barracks where you'll be placing each one of your meeples into, as well as the 2 that are left over go into the whirlpool. You hope to save them, because if you don't, you will get negative points at the end of the game. And then you're going to be setting up the water level. It's pretty clever, actually. There's guides and the different tiles that get placed as the water moves up. So it's a pretty neat representation of how the water works. And then over on the other side of the board, you're going to be placing these rewards. You'll place random rewards along the tower. Next to that, you're going to have all your different scaffolding where you're going to get a lot of the resources that you're looking for to do various things in this game. Now, up here you have upgrades for your particular characters or your player boards, your company, so to say. And you'll notice that these look very similar to what we had in Whistle Stop, but they do work differently and you can't steal them from other players, which is nice. And then across the top of the board, you have the cards, which are going to do all kinds of various things. Now, there's some additional things around the board you're going to be placing. You have the stars, which are victory points. You've got additional rewards, and of course, all your resources. You have several different types here. So let's go over to the player board, and we'll take a look at that. So looking at your player board, you'll see there's various spots to add the different resources. And at the start of the game, everyone's going to start with resources, but depending on where you are in the player order, will give you additional resources and different ones than everyone else. Now, the main resources here are water, you have iron, gold, and coal. Those are your main resources, but there's also a whistle. The whistle acts as a wild. It can be any of the resources. So again, as you go through the game, you can ever only have 4 of each type of these resources on your player board. Next to those resources on your player board, you'll see what the possible things you can do in your turn. The main ones are collecting and forge, and we'll dive into what those mean in a minute, but those are here to help you and guide you through the game. Then over on the far left of your board is where you'll be placing all your workers. So again, you have the hot air balloon, you have the blimp, and the dreadnought. And these are going to all be placed on the side of the board ready for use. And then you've got spots along the top and bottom of the board where you'll be putting upgrades as you progress through the game. Now, every player gets to start with their own special player power, so to say, and you'll shuffle these up and deal out one more than the number of players at the table. And it's kind of a draft. You'll go around picking one and passing on the rest. And you'll do it in reverse order. So the last player will get to pick first and so forth. And then each player will get to pick 2 scaffoldings of the same type. And they'll get to place one, but it has to touch the water, and they get to keep one. And then you're basically ready to start the game. So first, let's take a look at the grid on this board, because this is where you're going to be placing or building scaffolding along with those marvelous machines that are going to do all kinds of things throughout the game. However, there has to be scaffolding in place in order for you to build one of these machines. Now, the thing you're doing with collecting really is that you're trying to use the abilities of the different scaffolding and machines, if they're present, in order to gain resources. So one of the things you might do is place one of your ships next to the different scaffolding here to gather an iron and an ore. And as long as it's adjacent to, or orthogonally adjacent, I should say, to those resources, you will just collect them and put them on your player board. Likewise, if there's any machines in play and you place one of your ships next to it, you'll activate it. And for the small machines, that's typically just gaining more resources. But it gets more complex as you go through the medium and the large machines. You might be paying resources to do a certain thing that machine calls for. So they're really powerful and they're vast, and all kinds of different things you can do with these machines. As an example, let's take a look at 3 different machines. For this small machine known as the double pointer, if you put your ship next to it, you get 2 victory points. It's that simple. And for this medium machine, this is the Tesla coil. You're going to pay 1 iron in order to get one of the face down rewards off the side of the board. You can pick any of those and put it into your player area. A lot of these rewards are going to be one-time usage, and you're just going to be able to use it right away if you so choose. Now, the large machine here though, this one's pretty interesting. So this is the salvage yard, and you can pay 1 iron and 1 water in order to gain partially submerged machines and put them into your player area. And what that means, as this water rises, if there's a machine that's been covered partially with the water, it's no longer going to be active. It's going to be waterlogged and can't be used. But this ability on this machine would allow you to grab one of those, salvage one, for later use in the game. Or you're going to choose to dock one of your ships around the board. And there's various costs here. However, any of the costs, anywhere you dock, it's very well defined on what you need to pay in order to dock there and get those things. So for instance, for the medium machine, it's going to cost you 3 iron to grab one of those tiles. But you have small, you have medium, and you have the large machines. On the other side of the board, you have the ability to save one of your workers from the whirlpool, because at the end of the game, those workers will be worth -5 points. So you want to get them out of that whirlpool and then move them up to available scaffolding so they're safe, at least for now. And then there's your scaffolding. You're going to be getting those and various costs here depending on how many of the different scaffolding you want to grab. And then you have upgrades, right? As well as cards. Now the cards are going to do all kinds of different things. You're going to draw based on paying the cost. And whenever you see the star, that's any type of resource that you want to pay to get 2 or 3 cards. Now, the first card is free. They kind of hook you that way, right? But the thing is that do all kinds of different things. This card will be a mystery upgrade. You'll pay a gold and you'll basically grab the top of the face down upgrades and apply it to your player board. Now, again, these upgrades are going to add and aid you and give you abilities throughout the game. So you really do want to pay attention to all of the things, and there's a nice balance there as you try to figure out how to best utilize your player board and the different resources and the different machines and scaffolding. Now, anytime you do get scaffolding and machines, they're just going to go into your player area for later use. Or you've chosen to forge. And the first step in forging is gathering your ships from around the side of the board and putting them back to your player board. Now you can build up to 3 times as long as you can pay the cost in water. However, that first build is free as long as you have the supplies to build, either machines or scaffolding. Scaffolding you're going to be placing out adjacent to other scaffolding, and for every edge that the scaffolding touches, you're going to gain a victory point, which is very nice. And when you build a machine, this is where it gets interesting. You want to build a machine in an area that has a completed scaffolding. It has to have that structure in place for either the small, medium, or large. And you hope to have some of your meeples there, because when you place that machine, you'll get victory points as indicated at the top of the tile, but any workers that are there are going to get promoted. They're going to be moved over to the tower. And there's a victory point scale here, which you'll get at the end of the game. So workers are very crucial to gaining you points and also saving them. Keep that in mind, because again, that's negative points at the end of the game. So those are the main things that you're building there, but then you have options with your workers. Also important to note that when you do promote those workers, if there's a reward in place, you're going to gather it. And sometimes it's just straight up victory points that you get from those rewards. So they have all kinds of different things. There can be resources and things like that. So you can cash those in right away if you so choose. Now, with your workers, you can either spend 1 gold or 2 golds. 2 gold will rescue them from the whirlpool. Again, very important to do, and placing them anywhere on the scaffolding. But if you want to move them, you can move them up the scaffolding or bring one from one of the barracks, which is on the side of the board or the side of the grid here. And the thing is that it's always going to cost you a gold to move them and always cost you 2 gold to rescue them. But you have to choose. You're either moving them or rescuing them. Now there's also a couple bonus actions that you can perform. Now, if you've been collecting rewards, you can choose to cash one of those in, or you can play one of your cards, which might allow you to move a worker. So there are ways to move workers and do a lot of the things that you're doing in this game, but the cards give you that extra action on your turn to do so. Now let's take a look at how the water rises. So water is a resource. So in the game, you'll be placing ships and gathering water. But water can also be detrimental. And as you build scaffolding ever closer to the danger line, and then you build machines on the scaffolding, well, as soon as there's any machine that even partially goes above the danger line, you'll cause some snow melt because things are heating up, and you're gonna partially flood the valley. And I really like the visual representation of how they did this here. It's gonna move up on the peg. You'll move 1 tile of water down to the next peg. Now, if there's any meeples here, then those are gonna get flushed down into the whirlpool. But if there's any machines, those machines become waterlogged and they're no longer able to be used. Unless you have a special ability later in the game that allows you to rescue that machine, that can happen. So there's lots of interesting things as this water rises, and you want to keep an eye on your meeples because, like I said earlier, having them in the whirlpool at the end of the game is -5 points per meeple. So yeah, this is something to keep an eye on for sure. And you know, that could be your directive. Maybe you're quickly building, trying to flood as fast as possible to get to the end of the game. And so the game will continue this way round after round until there are no more workers in the barracks, either because of water or because you've used them all. And then you'll go one more round and finish out. But you're gonna score points at the end of the game, and you're gonna get points for having meeples on the tower, negative points for meeples in the whirlpool, and then for any of your upgrades for your player board, you'll get points associated with those. But then anything in storage, you could have your resources, you could have different machines or scaffolding in storage as well as cards. Those are all going to give you points at the end of the game. And whoever has the most points is going to be the most successful company. All right, folks, just a reminder once again, this has been a Dice Tower paid preview. And everything you've seen here is a pre-production copy. It is so close to final, but not quite. It really is a beautiful looking game. The artwork is great. Now, I really like the theme of this game, that it's airships docking and doing the various works. And the theme really comes through as the water rises and that visual representation of that as well, as things become waterlogged or as your meeples or workers fall into the whirlpool, and how you have to keep an eye on that. Lots of decisions to be made as you move through this game. And there's a lot of icons. So the rulebook has a handy guide, and once you play once or twice, you really do get a really good handle on what all the icons mean. Very straightforward. And I love the components. The resource components, really, really neat. They did a nice job. They're really upgraded, nice components. But ultimately, folks, if this looks like a game that would be of interest to you, I'm sure they'd appreciate your support. So I think that's it from me. And until next time, we'll see you at the table.